What is up, and welcome back to the Lakers Theory podcast. I am Shane Jackson. Joined with me, as always, is Austin Case. It's been a minute since we recorded for a multitude of reasons. One, the last time we recorded, the Lakers were down by 1 billion points to the Suns at halftime, and we knew the season was over, and there was nothing really to talk about. And then when there was something to finally talk about, we were actually on vacation together in Colorado when the Russ news dropped. And I was tempted to just go live on a podcast then, because just hearing your reaction then was just on the money, perfect for podcast audio. But unfortunately, we did not do that. But I would serve that as a teaser here, because the reason to watch this show, even if it is a few weeks late from the news, is because Austin is not a fan of Russell Westbrook, and he's gonna let you know it when it comes time to talk about that. But I really wanted to start off with just kind of an intro and explain kind of the gap here. That's what I just did. Right after the vacation is when I moved, and I moved to Vegas, where I'm writing about sports gambling now. And so there was just a lot of reasons why we were not able to record right away. So Austin, tell the people how you've been doing. And we will get into all things Lakers here in a few minutes, but just 3-minute description of what you've done in your absence.
Well, nothing exciting coming from me. I am an accountant, so there's not a whole lot of turnover, and it's just boring. But, vacation was good. I had a lot of fun. Hiking Pikes Peak is something I will never do again. I would not recommend somebody do it because it was terrible. But once you do get to the top, it is, I don't know, it's a certain feeling, and I can't describe it. But vacation was fun. My summer as a whole has just been laid back and relaxed, really.
Yeah, that's also part of the reason why we didn't record while we were on vacation. Either we were the night before climbing Pikes Peak or night after climbing Pikes Peak. Either way would not have been good for us to record then either as well. But also just because Austin was pouting and switching allegiance, apparently, to the Mavericks. But he's still doing his Lakers Theory podcast with us. So thank you, Austin, for being here. In relation to, obviously, me moving out West Coast, expect more content now for us. I think we'll have more freedom now to do podcasts. And for one, the Lakers games will end at a reasonable time for me, and I'll be ready to hop on. But it'll be dependent on when Austin wants to sleep or not. But expect more podcasts moving forward for us. Year one, we kind of went through our ups and downs as a podcast. But I think we can be better in year two, and I hope we can do that. But let's start with kind of the off-season stuff here. And this is kind of going to be like one giant podcast where we talk about all the off-season moves. And maybe give our kind of early thoughts on what to expect from this team in the season. I'm sure we'll have a podcast or two when it's all said and done before the season starts. And then we'll have regular content throughout the season as well. But let's start off with the big news, which really isn't news at this point. It's been a few weeks old, but Russell Westbrook is a Laker. That became official recently. He actually had his press conference somewhat recently, a few days ago, I believe. And really, I'm just going to open up the floor to Austin, because when this was all rumored to be happening, Austin was complaining about Russell Westbrook, and he's always been complaining about Russell Westbrook for as long as I've known him as a basketball fan. And so I really want the next few minutes to be just Austin complaining that Russell Westbrook is a Laker. And after he does that, I will explain why it could work.
So I don't know why. I honestly, I can't explain to you why I dislike him. But one of the icing on the cake, I guess, examples were when the Lakers were blowing out the Rockets in the 2020 playoffs. And Russ was just, moping around because, the game was over. The series was over. But he was just moping around. And then, I don't know, he got a breakaway dunk against nobody, and he was talking shit to what crowd was there, and I was just like, I hate this guy. That sums it up. To me, that's just the type of player he is. When it's over, he's mopey. When he does something good, it's celebrating and in your face. But and I I don't know. I just feel like he is a more selfish basketball player where he wants to be the guy in charge. He wants to kind of, I don't know, he wants to be the reason the team does well. And I don't want that type of vibe on the Lakers because I don't think it's going to work. And I would rather, I don't know, a part of me that hates Russ, or I wouldn't say hate, dislikes him as a basketball player because from what I hear, he's like a really awesome person outside of the court. So, but what the part of me that dislikes him as a basketball player wants to see the Lakers not win. So I can be like, it was his fault. But then the other part of me that is a massive Lakers fan wants them to win because, well, you know, that's the point of playing this game is to win championships. So I do have my initial reaction was very upset.
Yeah.
But as they put more of the roster together, which we'll get into that, I don't know. I'm more excited about the season, and I will admit that they are going to be a very exciting team to watch.
Dang, that was a lot more tame than I expected.
I am not happy that Russ is on the team just because the second the rumors were flying around, I was just against it. I was like, it's not a good idea. And in my mind, I was like, there's no way it could work financially for the Lakers. Like his contract's too big. And I was like, the Lakers, especially after last season, don't really have the pieces that could be entertaining for a caliber of Russ that he is. And so I was disappointed. But I will probably come around. I'm not going to love Russell Westbrook, but I will be appreciative of what he brings to the Lakers. I think that's the best way I can put it.
But yeah, the first time he throws down a fast break dunk and Staples Center goes nuts, I think you'll appreciate him a little bit more. Also, like his press conference of, you know, how many ever days ago it was, where he mentioned skipping, like trying to skip school to go see championship parades. Like he wanted to be a Laker. And that to me is really cool. I was expecting you to explain why it couldn't work and how the Lakers are screwed and all that stuff. So I was prepared to take a more optimistic route here. So I will still go that way, but I think there are definitely ways that this could not work out. I think the concerns about maybe how everybody fits, especially in the playoffs, are very real. But from just a regular season standpoint, I mean, Russell Westbrook is a floor raiser for a reason. Like his teams tend to do well. He brings an energy. I mean, think about, you know, how many times we jumped on this podcast and they had a random overtime game where they just labored through and either barely won or lost. And we were just like, this is boring. This is like, they're not even trying. You're not going to get that with a Russell Westbrook on the floor. Like, I mean, maybe other players might not try, but he's certainly going to try a lot. And so to me, I think that's the interesting point to all of this is that I think the Lakers made a decision because obviously, you know, another avenue was they were exploring the Buddy fit as well. But I think they made a decision saying, hey, we saw what happens when one of our stars goes down or both the stars go down. I mean, this team went from the number 2 seed in the West and then dropped down to the play-in game. Because of injuries. They're like, we don't want that to happen. We need a contingency plan. And Russell Westbrook is that. And not only is he that, but if they're all three on the floor, like he is able to, I guess, take the mileage off the other two in a way than regular season that we thought Dennis Schroeder and Montrezl Harrell were going to do more of last year. And they certainly did their part as well before all the injuries. That was out of their control when AD and LeBron went down. But I think from that standpoint, like he's going to raise the floor. He's going to raise the energy. And I think that part to me is the entertaining part. It's like, I just think they're more exciting and more interesting, especially in the regular season. I think there are legit concerns, and I think those won't be exposed completely until the postseason. But from a regular season standpoint, I'm very excited.
Yeah, I legit, I was trying to make up my mind if like I was going to give Russell Westbrook a chance or just be anti-Russ the entire time. And I was looking up because he made some comments about Kobe, And so I was like, did Kobe actually care about Russ? And I found some articles there, like Kobe just, I don't know, he enjoyed the way that Russ played the game and like kind of shared the same mentality. And I was like, damn. I was like, now I got to give him a chance. So that's where it turned around for me, and so that's why my take on the Russ news was a little different now instead of when it first happened. So
and you're making this move to get the Russell Westbrook you expect to make. So I don't think we can't talk ourselves into maybe a different player than what we're expecting. But I mean, his usage rate I believe was down a little bit last year. So if he can accept being the third guy on this team when it matters, which is the big question, when a game's on the line or when it's in the postseason, like, can he handle the fact that he is not the guy? Then that's where you're going to figure out if this fits or not. Like, there's spacing issues, obviously, there's spacing concerns and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's about if he can accept a role that's smaller than what he's used to in order to win a championship. And I don't know if he can, because it's easy to say that now in August when you're joining the Lakers team. But I think that's what's going to ultimately decide whether or not this trade was successful. In the regular season, he's going to be exciting. In the playoffs, we are going to have concerns, I think, all the way up into it. But from a basketball standpoint, I mean, this team, how many times did we talk about how we wanted the Lakers to do more in fast break last year? And he's going to do that. Like, just think about, his OKC days with Steve Adams and what he can do with Anthony Davis from that standpoint, and having a big man who rolls to the basket. I mean, I think there's a lot of avenues here where you can explore with Russell Westbrook lineups. And honestly, the non-LeBron lineups that were so pathetic in the last 2 or 3 years have been a non-factor. Like, that's how Lakers have lost games. I think with Russell Westbrook, you can, figure that out a little bit better now. And maybe the Lakers have a chance to not only stay afloat in the non-LeBron minutes, but actually thrive. So I just think there's ways that this could all work out. And I understand the concerns. I wanted to have more of an optimistic view because of what I thought Austin was going to say. Anything from that standpoint, or do you want to give your way too early thoughts of how this is all going to play
out? We can just continue. I don't know. I'm torn. I really don't know. The fandom in me wants to say they're going to be in the finals, but the fact that I don't know. I honestly I can't pinpoint anything. Like, I could see them. I could see them falling, just really figuring out that this team doesn't work in the playoffs, and it could come back to haunt them. Maybe not in the first round if they get a higher seed, but like in the semis or the Western Conference Finals, like it, all it takes is a team that can, really defend Russ to his weaknesses, which is, don't let him get to the basket, don't let him drive and kick and stuff like that. Like, those are his strengths, and it's like, make him shoot. Like, if Russ is taking 20 shots a night, the Lakers probably aren't going to win an NBA championship. So it's really going to come down to how Russ accepts his role on this team, and if he can really just, I don't know, I guess be that bridge guy in those non-LeBron minutes, like you said. So, if they can figure out how to coexist, this team could win a championship, especially with the other pieces that they added. But if there's some, if they struggle to really figure out how to coexist with each other, then, it might be a first round exit again, or in the semis. So, it really just comes down to the fit.
Yeah, speaking of last year's playoffs, we have not actually talked since that playoff first round exit. But congratulations to the Bucks, obviously, and Giannis. Giannis is one of the easiest guys to root for. That was awesome. Big time congrats to the Suns for getting there. When we said we wanted the Suns in the first round, big oops. Although I still thought that series was going towards Lakers' favor, right, before all the injuries happened. But still, congratulations to both teams. But yeah, I think it's easy to say in August when you're looking at the Western Conference. It's hard. Like it's hard to imagine there's a better team in the Western Conference than the Lakers, and so you feel like you could pencil them in the finals, but the concerns are real. And I don't think they're as much of a slam dunk as maybe I thought they were this time last year, or this
Mhm.
heading into last year. And I don't know if anything could happen in the regular season to alleviate those concerns whatsoever. So I will say that I think they make the finals. Is my way too early prediction, and I would, a loss to probably the Nets or something like that. I mean, those are the two betting favorites, so that's what I'll just
Mhm.
defer to right now. Let's kind of group the rest of these offseason moves as a whole. Just give me your, I guess, general thoughts on all the Lakers acquisitions and departures, and just kind of this new team as a whole, and then we'll get into our favorite individual signings to give a couple guys some shout outs.
So I collectively, I don't know. I really enjoyed this offseason. Like it happened very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I, I can't remember 100%, but I think everybody came on the first and second day. So like
Sounds right.
I don't know, man. The Lakers got out there quick and they got the guys they wanted and they didn't waste any time. And so now it's just they have what three roster spots left. So now it's just maybe add a bench depth piece, a guy that can come in and play a handful of minutes every night. But I I really like this roster. Um, And on a 2K perspective, it is a very awesome roster to play with. I've already downloaded it and used it, so it's very fun there. But I kind of something that I see is like guys get to the Lakers and like they just way underperform how they were when they got there. And so like some people say it's it's the big stage that gets them. Well, what I see with a lot of these guys are former Lakers, which I think
Yep.
just about everybody but Russ and Carmelo played for the Lakers. Um, but then you have, Russ is a superstar talent. He's been in the finals and stuff. Or yeah, they've made it to the finals, right?
Yeah, he was on a
OKC.
Thunder team that
Okay,
lost to the Heat,
that's
and
what I
yeah,
thought. That's what I thought.
yeah,
So you have guys that have played in a big stage. Carmelo played in New York. Like that's you know, guys are used to the spotlight, the bright lights, and so like I like that aspect of it. Not that that is a huge difference maker, but it could affect some guys, and so I'm really excited. Um, I really like the roster, and I think they did a very good job of putting it together. So that's
yeah.
kind of where I stand.
My overall thoughts, and I thought you summed it up pretty well. I would say that there's definitely a potential new identity with this team. I think we kind of overanalyzed that a little bit last year going into the season, but I had concerned about maybe how they were going to still be good defensively. I have way more concerns about that now. This is a team that really shifted on the offensive side of the spectrum. And I think what they are banking on, anyways, is that Frank Vogel, a defensive minded head coach, will figure it out. And as long as you have AD protecting the rim, and you're going to be fine. And I hope
Mhm.
that it's fine enough that their offensive improvement picks that up. As long as they are, because they're not going to be number one in that defensive rating this year. Like that's just not going to happen. If they are, build a statue for Frank Vogel. That's the only explanation. But if they can stay okay in that area, and then obviously be much better offensively, specifically maybe the half court offense, then
Mhm.
maybe that can all balance each other out, and they're more of a dangerous team moving forward. So I don't know. It is going to be interesting to see. I do trust Frank Vogel. I think AD, if he is engaged on that end, LeBron obviously, and maybe I don't want to say Westbrook can be a completely different player that he's ever shown, but maybe he can be more engaged on that end if he sees other guys picking it up as well. So
Mhm.
I don't know. To me, it'll be interesting to see how that defensive, how this team, shapes up defensively moving forward. When we've kind of taken that for granted the last couple of years, just the fact that they could figure out a game plan and kind of eliminate players and eliminate points of attack. But perimeter defense, especially, I think, is a concern here. Let's talk about our individual signings to give a couple guys some shout outs. You alluded to your guy earlier just a little bit ago. So bring up my man, Carmelo.
So I'm really excited for Carmelo to be on the Lakers. For the big reason, like I think it's going to be exciting for him and LeBron to play together, just because they have such a close friendship and all that stuff. So I'm really excited for that aspect. But I've always been a fan of Carmelo. I like the way he's played the game, and so it's kind of exciting to see a guy of that caliber come here. And honestly, hopefully he can win a ring. That would be obviously exciting just for the Lakers fan and me, but also you have a guy like Carmelo who I guess a championship has always eluded him in his career to finally have that happen. So. Carmelo is probably definitely my favorite signing in that. I'm just excited to see him in a Lakers jersey.
He's interesting from a standpoint that like he has always had somewhat of a role on like every team that he's ever been on, and I think he's obviously going to bring his on the offensive end and get the ball through the hoop, and that's his role. But this team is pretty deep, and I just feel like some guys are going to get cut out or have a smaller role than they anticipate. And I don't know, he could be on the chopping block in terms of like just how much of a role he actually has. So I think there's a couple guys that you can get away with doing that, but can he accept that? I don't know. So that part is interesting to me. Like, how much is he willing to sacrifice for just a chance to play for a championship? That'll be interesting to see and how all that plays out. My favorite signing, though, is a guy that I think would make sacrifices. And that's Kent Bazemore. But I don't think he has to. I mean, he's the instant leader probably, I think, for that potential starting number 2 slot in that lineup. And he, in what I was talking about, an offseason full of moves where they kind of went for offense and maybe sacrificed a little bit on the defensive end. I think he brings a lot on the defense. I think he was second in net defensive rating from the Warriors last year. And he's coming off a career year from deep. He shot 40%. Obviously, people don't expect him to shoot that well on a given season, but when you talk about like the 3 guys that command the ball and the attention that they, 3 guys the Lakers have, I mean, maybe there's a chance he has more open shots than he envisions, and so maybe he does have a really another good year in him from deep as well. So I just think his signing in particular, interests me from a basketball standpoint. And then you talk about him being a former Laker, which pretty much everybody is on this team, and the fact that kind of Lakers chose to save money to go after Carmelo how many ever years ago it was, which you can speak to better than me because you were actually a Lakers fan then. But he was one of the people that they had to cut basically, or or at least move on from, in an attempt to save money for Carmelo, who actually didn't come at the time. So. I just think that's interesting to me to how his story comes full circle and he's a Laker again. And I just think he is going to bring a lot to the team that I'm excited to see more on a nightly basis now that he's a Laker. But let's say goodbye to the players we will miss the most. The guys who helped the Lakers win a title a couple years ago. We'll be quick on this, but I'll start. I mean, it just sucks that Alex Caruso is gone. I think, honestly, this offseason would have been perfect in my mind if they had just had Alex Caruso on this team. Like, if he was just on one of the roster spots, it felt right. Like, the Lakers are clearly saying, hey, we need to win now. We need to take advantage of this team while LeBron still has this window, while this particular core has this window. And I think letting Alex Caruso walk at, what was a reasonable price doesn't really bode well when you're talking about what this team was trying to accomplish this offseason. And especially when you talk about all the, the teams, the sacrifices they have to make on the defensive end. Like, he brought it on the defensive end. He just was, I think, he's a perfect player to play with LeBron. He wanted to be a Laker. It just sucks that he's not here. Like, if he was here instead of someone else or, had one of these roster spots, I would just feel so much better about this team. Which is kind of sad to say about a role player, but I don't know. I love Alex Caruso. He was my second favorite Laker the last couple of years, and the play that stood out to me was that, defense play against the Celtics in the regular season. Like, he basically won them the game. Like, he's a very good player, very smart player. When we talk about his story as well, just where he came from, like, I don't know. It's just sad that we don't get to root for Alex Caruso on a nightly basis anymore. And I don't understand the reasoning for why the Lakers moved on from him.
Yeah, that was a big thing with me this offseason. Like, just letting him, just letting him go.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was unreasonable for them to be able to bring him and THT back and make these moves that they have been making. So once I saw the news that he was signing with Chicago, I was just like, damn, like that sucks. Like, I was really upset. And so, but honestly, what the Lakers just did, I don't know, he could be back,
Yeah.
Within a few years. Like, heck, maybe he, I wouldn't rule that out, that he is not a Laker again. So, but I will miss Caruso. He was an exciting player, especially anytime that he got to jam on somebody. That was it kind of catches you off guard every time, even though he could do that. I'm going to miss KCP and Kuz a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know. They were some of my favorite players. I always believed in Kuz, even though I don't know. Offensively, last year was just a weird year for the entire team, to be honest. But I will miss Kuz. I feel like I don't know. I feel like he loved LA, and like he just did everything that he needed to do to provide for the team, especially defensively. And I think that's a big thing that he improved on, was his defensive efforts, and it really showed. And I don't know. I just loved KCP. I loved his mindset. I'll miss those guys, and it kind of sucks that they're gone. And I really hope that Kuz can flourish in DC. And I really hope that all those guys, they have good seasons and just have a good career, if they don't make it back to LA.
You didn't want to wear your Kuz jersey for this podcast?
I didn't even think about it. Honestly, I almost got on without a shirt on, and I was like, oh shit, I need a shirt.
Yeah, you do. That is priority number one. So let's close out this podcast. We can just spend a few minutes on this, just a fun exercise where we give our kind of starting lineup prediction and our closing lineup prediction, because those two aren't really related. And so let's start there. We don't have to spend a whole lot of analysis on this, because I think we'll have plenty of time throughout the season to talk about the lineups, because I think this could be something that goes on for a few months into the season. But who do you think is going to start for this team?
So I'm taking Russ, Bazemore, LeBron, AD, and Howard. I just feel like that's a solid starting five.
And so tell me the reason you went with Howard, because I think that part is interesting. That's where we differ. So let's start there.
So I don't know. I was thinking Howard just because he's more of a, I don't know, rim protection guy. But also he's a good lob threat. And I know kind of, AD is probably going to play more of that pick and roll with LeBron and even Russ. And so, it might be a spacing, or not necessarily spacing, but just where do you go or stuff like that on the court. But I don't know. I feel like Howard can provide more rim protection when AD is, maybe guarding a stretch four, which, I would consider him a stretch four too, but just when AD can't be around the rim and in the paint and stuff, I feel like Howard is a better fit for that role out of him and Gasol.
Well, the reason why I thought that this was interesting is because I went on a run today and I was thinking about what my answer is going to be for this. And I automatically penciled in Gasol, and that's who I went with as well, because I think there are real spacing concerns with this team. Obviously, that was the big thing that was talked about as soon as Russ came here. It's like, hey, there's no spacing on this team. And that's real. Like that's not going away. And so you automatically throw Gasol in there and you're like, okay, that helps a little bit, right? Or at least more so than Howard. But I think there's something to the fact of, hey, throw Howard in there and steer into this. Like steer into that there's no spacing and you're just going to be bully ball. Like you are bigger, faster, stronger than everybody that you're playing against. And it's honestly, it's the recipe that led the Lakers to winning the championship 2 years ago. The Bucks played that kind of style to win it this past year. So like, I think there's something to the fact that like, hey, also this is what everybody else is doing in the NBA. That you think you need spacing, so let's play bully ball. Ultimately, I don't think that's what the Lakers are going to do. I think they're going to say, hey, we need some spacing. Gasol's going to be the starter, but I think he's almost a non-factor in the playoffs. Like I think if AD is going to start at 5 or Howard maybe starts there, and you mix those two in, and Gasol is like the third option who gets a minimal role. But Bazemore is my guy for the 2, and yours as well. I think that's the interesting position for me. Like that could still be open throughout the season. Like you could rotate other guys in there. But I think he makes sense for Frank Vogel when he's saying, oh, I'm going to pick the guy who plays defense for that position or has the best chance playing, better defense on that end. So closing lineup prediction real quick, because we definitely don't need to do analysis here. Because we'll talk about this throughout the season. What do you think? What do you got?
So I'm going Russ, Bazemore as well, Ariza, LeBron, and then AD at the 5.
Yeah, and just tell me real quick why you picked Ariza.
So I was going with Ariza because he just brings probably a better defensive, or he just brings more defensively than you could probably get out of a Howard. When you're really trying to close that down, like AD at the 5 is better defensively than Howard at the 5. And so I wanted Bazemore in there at the 2 because he is, that I feel like that's why he's going to start at the 2 is because for one, he provides an outside threat, but also he's probably the better defensive guy that they brought in this offseason. And then I like Ariza too because he can get after it defensively, and I just feel like that might be the best defensive team that they could throw out there.
Yeah.
So
I went with Russ, Ellington, Bazemore, LeBron, AD. AD at the 5 is the closing lineup. Like there's no question about it. Bazemore for all the reasons why I said. He is more of that 2-3 role, so I just put him in the 3 there. And then Ellington is the guy. Who's going to hit his shot. And I think you're going to want that guy in a closing lineup. And so I just think he'll help from this. You're going to lose with Gasol not being on the floor in that spacing. I think Ellington's going to provide as well. So that's why I went that closing lineup. That one's interesting to me because you could throw THT in there instead of Ellington, depending on how Monk plays. Maybe he's in there as well. But I think that one's more open-ended as well. That's going to do it for this podcast, though, before Austin falls asleep because it is 9:30 Kansas time and only 7:30 Vegas time. But once again, we will do podcasts on a more regular basis. I apologize for my audio if it was really bad all podcast. I will have my full equipment next time we record. But we will be better in year 2. I promise that. He's Austin Case. I'm Shane Jackson. Thank you for listening to the Lakers Theory podcast, and see you next time.